Is general manager Ryan Poles' patient approach going to pay off for the Chicago Bears? What's going on, guys? I'm back with another Chicago Bears discussion video. I kind of want to talk about Ryan Poles, his, kind of new philosophy, right, as general manager. We haven't really seen a philosophy like this in a long time for any Chicago Bears general manager, and I kind of want to discuss if it's going to work out in the long term, in my opinion. So, hope you guys are doing well on this Saturday morning. It's a nice, I wouldn't say nice day outside. It was actually snowing earlier today, which I can't believe. It's like middle of April and it's still snowing outside somehow. But that is the curse of living in the Midwest, I guess. But let's talk about Ryan Poles. Okay, a guy that's become a pretty, I would say, controversial figure in some ways with how he's been handling the Chicago Bears offseason to this point. Okay, a lot of Bears fans are kind of split on if this patient approach is really what's best for Justin Fields for the future of the Bears, or if he's just being, a little bit too relaxed, if he's not being aggressive enough in trying to build a good roster around Justin Fields. And I think that's a valid debate to have. Okay, you don't always have to agree with everybody else in your fan base. Like, you're allowed to have a differing opinion. Let me know your opinion down below in the comments. But in this video, I'll be walking you guys through like what my viewpoint is on this whole plan that Ryan Poles has, and I'll start by talking about what I think his plan is in the first place. I think it's pretty much to build through the draft and slowly build this Chicago Bears team up to sustainable long-term contention. Okay, we don't want a situation where we're only going to be competitive for 1 year like under Ryan Pace. Okay, under Ryan Pace, we sucked for pretty much every year besides 2018, partly because I feel like Ryan Pace made too many win now aggressive moves while sacrificing good portions of the future. And obviously, if he got the quarterback right, it might have been a different scenario. But even if he did get the quarterback right, the pieces around Mitch Trubisky weren't always that great, guys. Like, we had problems on the receiving core, we had problems on the offensive line, we had a big coaching problem. He chose the wrong coach. So obviously Ryan Pace walked into a pretty tough situation, but there was a lot of bad stuff that he did as general manager for the Chicago Bears, which I feel like kind of is also getting Bears fans into bad habits as well. They want their team to be big spenders in free agency. They want their team to sometimes overpay on day one, like Ryan Pace did plenty of times. They want their team to trade draft capital for older players, even when the roster at this point in time probably doesn't need that, right? Like, we need to build through the draft. We need to acquire good players on cheap contracts so that we can create something sustainable for the long term. And I think that's exactly what Ryan Poles is trying to do. He said from day one that he wants this team to be built from the draft. And if you look around the NFL, that's how all the great teams have been built. I know people will say, oh, the Los Angeles Rams, they trade away all their draft picks every year, right? Like, how are they winning Super Bowls? Well, if you look at the Rams roster, the majority of their starters were drafted players. Okay, they have great picks in rounds 3, 4, 5, and they get a bunch of comp picks every single year as well. The Rams have I think 3 comp picks this year because of players leaving their team, and that's how they operate, okay, through the draft, but also trading draft picks when they can to acquire superstars, because that's where the roster is at this point in time. They already have a bunch of young players on cheap deals performing really well for them, which is why they can afford contracts for Matt Stafford, for Aaron Donald, for other stars that they have on their team. So a great metaphor for this is that you have to build the foundation of the house first before you build all the expensive stuff on top. You can't build an expensive 5-car garage, you can't build a patio, you can't build a fancy kitchen without having the foundation of the house first. And right now, the Chicago Bears don't have that foundation. Ryan Poles is trying to build that foundation through the NFL draft, but the thing about that is that it takes time to build that foundation, and we only had 5 picks this year. We had to trade Khalil Mack to get an extra second rounder. We don't have a single first round pick, so not a lot of draft capital to improve our situation. And fans want to see Ryan Poles build around Justin Fields right now while also building that foundation at the same time. It's a really tough situation to be in. And personally, this is just my opinion, but personally, I feel like the way that Ryan Poles has been approaching free agency and the offseason in general, it is the only way he could have approached it if he wanted to build this roster to be competitive in the long term. If we traded away draft picks for some receiver, if we traded away draft capital for some other star on the other side of the ball, if we invested a crazy amount of money on day one, if we paid, for example, Christian Kirk $20 million a year like he got with the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think next year, yeah, we would have been better, but in the long run, that would have hurt us big time, guys. Like, this roster is not in any position to be trading draft capital for older players, to be overpaying guys on day one of free agency. And regardless, even if you do have a good roster, if you're overpaying guys on day one, good portion of the time, those contracts are not going to work out for you. I think I saw a stat that like 60 to 70% of free agents, they do not perform as well for the second team as they did for their first. There's a reason why these guys are free agents, which is again a big reason why you want to build your team through the NFL draft, so you don't have to overpay guys from the outside that might not have what you're looking for in your organization. If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, where Ryan Poles is coming from, this is pretty much the approach that they had. Okay, the Kansas City Chiefs have made the playoffs, like, I think every single year in the past, like 8 or 9 years, like, they made the playoffs so frequently. And obviously when they got Mahomes, they went over the top to be a Super Bowl contender. But before Mahomes, guys, they drafted really, really well, okay, in rounds 1, rounds 2, rounds 3, also got some steals in the later rounds, but they built that team through the NFL draft. Guys like Travis Kelce, guys like Tyreek Hill, okay, recently guys like Creed Humphrey, like Nick Bolton. They've always been a great drafting team, which is why the Kansas City Chiefs have been able to have so much success. I feel like a lot of Bears fans want to skip those building steps. They want to go straight from step 1 to step 4, but like it or not, guys, right now we are at step 1. We're building this roster from scratch pretty much, and hopefully it works out in the long run. I will admit that I would have liked to see Ryan Poles invest a little bit more in the offensive line. It would have been so nice to get a guy like Ryan Bates, maybe pay him a little bit more to convince him to come to the Chicago Bears, but we lost out on Ryan Bates to the Buffalo Bills. And that's pretty much the downside of being patient, of being, not willing to overpay anybody in free agency. You're going to miss out on a lot of guys, but it usually ends up working for you in the long run if you draft well. And the draft is coming, guys, in only a couple weeks. So if Ryan Poles has a great NFL draft, if he drafts, a star receiver that falls to us, maybe a guy like George Pickens, maybe Christian Watson, Alec Pierce, like, there's a lot of great receivers that are going to be available for us in the NFL draft, some offensive linemen as well, maybe get some defensive guys later on. Like, hopefully it's offensive focus so we can at least build something around Justin Fields, because right now on paper the roster talent isn't that good. But I'm telling you guys, if you have the patience, if you trust the process just a little bit, I think this does have the potential of working out. Now, we might not be great next year, but in 2023 and beyond, the Chicago Bears have a chance of being a real threat in this division, guys. Because if you also look at the division, Aaron Rodgers is nearing the end of his career, okay? I know he's been destroying us his entire career, but it's going to be coming to an end probably pretty soon, right? Like, he's only on a what really is a 3-year deal. He's probably going to retire after 3 years, according to all the sources out there. And the cap hits the Packers are enduring with Aaron Rodgers under contract are massive, okay? It's severely limiting their ability to put together a team. Like, their receivers right now are probably worse than our receivers, which is insane to think about, okay? Because Devontae Adams obviously got traded. So Packers hopefully getting weaker soon. The Vikings have Kirk Cousins at quarterback. The Lions have Jared Goff. Now, the Lions do have a lot of draft capital, so if they draft well, they also maybe could be a threat down the road, but we'll see. Okay, the division right now looks like it's wide open for the taking for any team that wants to take it, and hopefully the Chicago Bears are that team if Justin Fields turns into the quarterback that we think he can be, and if Ryan Poles drafts well over the next couple years. So let me know your thoughts and opinions down below, guys. Do you agree with my opinions? Do you disagree? Do you think Ryan Poles' patient approach is going to pay off? Let me know down below. Enjoy your weekend, guys. But as always, bear down.